I remember when I got that full-ride engineering scholarship. My dad clapped me on the shoulder, pride shining in his eyes, for the first time I could remember. 3 years later, I stood in our kitchen, my belongings scattered across the front lawn, as that same man told me to choose between my education and my family. The ultimatum hung between us like a physical thing: quit college to care for my disabled siblings or be disowned. I spent that first night curled up in my Honda Civic, waiting for a call that never came. Before I tell you how my own father tried to destroy my future, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to choose between your dreams and family obligations. I grew up in Glenwood, Indiana, a town so small it barely registered on state maps. My childhood home was a modest 2-story, with fading blue paint and creaky floorboards that announced every midnight snack run. My father, Gerald, ran a construction company with an iron fist and brought the same approach home. He preached about family responsibility before saying grace at dinner, and reminded us that blood takes care of blood so often it might as well have been embroidered on our living room wall. Mom, Diana, was his opposite in every way. Soft-spoken and gentle, she moved through our home like a whisper, always smoothing things over, always making peace. She loved us fiercely, but never stood against Dad when his temper flared. Their marriage operated on an unspoken agreement. He made the rules, she made them livable. Everything changed when I was 16 and my twin siblings were born. Jack and Emma arrived 2 months premature with multiple developmental challenges. The doctors used words like severe cognitive impairments and physical therapy requirements, while my parents nodded numbly. I watched my mother age 10 years in that hospital waiting room. Despite the new responsibilities at home, I maintained a 4.0 GPA. Studying became my escape. The library, staying open until 9 p.m., gave me a quiet refuge from the medical equipment that had transformed our living room into something resembling an intensive care unit. I helped with my siblings whenever I could, feeding them, reading to them, learning their physical therapy exercises, but school remained my North Star. When the scholarship letter from Westfield Engineering Institute arrived, I thought Dad would explode with pride. $200,000 of education, the first Patterson to attend college. He took me for burgers at Denny's Grill, something we had not done since I was 12, and told stories about his father working 60-hour weeks in the steel mill. "This is why we came to America 3 generations ago," he said. "For opportunities like this." Westfield was 193 miles from home, close enough for monthly visits, but far enough to start building my own life. The campus felt enormous after Glenwood, with its sprawling quadrangles and red brick buildings housing state-of-the-art laboratories. I called home every Sunday night at 8 p.m., sharp, giving detailed updates on my classes, and listening to Mom describe my siblings' small progresses. I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus tech support center, sending half my paycheck home despite Mom insisting I keep it. Dad never acknowledged these contributions directly, but occasionally mentioned that extra breathing room in the budget lately. The comments started during my sophomore year, little jabs slipped between normal conversation. "Must be nice sleeping through the night without alarms going off," or "Your mother had to take Emma to physical therapy alone yesterday while I worked overtime." Each call ended with a heavier weight on my shoulders. Then came the medical bills. Dad's back had been bothering him for years, the price of decades in construction, but he ignored it until he physically could not stand one morning. The MRI showed 3 herniated discs requiring immediate surgery. Insurance covered 60%, leaving thousands in out-of-pocket expenses. Around the same time, Mom developed rheumatoid arthritis, her hands swelling to the point she struggled with diaper changes. I offered to come home for the summer, delay my internship. "We need a long-term solution, not a summer Band-Aid," Dad replied flatly. During my calls with Mom, I heard the fatigue deepening in her voice. She never complained, but the background noise told the story. Jack having meltdowns that lasted hours, Emma's breathing machine beeping with alerts. When I asked about home health assistance, Mom whispered, "Your father says we do not air our problems to strangers." The tension built through my junior year fall semester. My professors noticed my distraction with my thermodynamics grades slipping from A's to C's. I started researching disability support services, government assistance programs, anything that might help. Dad dismissed every suggestion with growing hostility. "The government will not care for my children better than family," he growled during one particularly heated call. "A real man would step up." I heard the accusation beneath his words. I was not a real man in his eyes, not a real son. The confrontation that changed everything happened during spring break of my junior year. I had planned to stay on campus to catch up on projects, but Mom called on Tuesday night, her voice shaking. "Sterling, honey, could you come home this weekend? Your father. Just come home if you can." I drove through the night, arriving as the sun rose over our neighborhood. The lawn needed mowing, the gutters overflowed with dead leaves from the previous fall, small signs of a household in crisis. Inside, the house smelled of burned coffee and disinfectant. Mom hugged me with surprising strength, her thin shoulders trembling. Before I could ask what was happening, Dad emerged from the kitchen. He had lost weight, his work jeans hanging loose around his waist, deep lines carved around his mouth. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence," he said, the greeting lacking any warmth. "Mom called." "Sounded important," I replied, dropping my overnight bag by the stairs. Jack shrieked from the living room, a high-pitched sound of frustration we all recognized. Emma rocked in her specialized wheelchair headphones, covering her ears to block her brother's outburst. The house felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Mom disappeared to calm Jack, while Dad gestured for me to follow him to the kitchen. The breakfast dishes piled in the sink, prescription bottles lined the counter like toy soldiers. He poured himself coffee with a hand that shook slightly. "Your mother cannot do this anymore," he said without preamble. "And my back means I cannot lift the kids. The doctor says one wrong move, and I could be permanently paralyzed." I nodded, waiting for him to continue already, mentally calculating how much I could contribute from my summer internship salary. "You need to come home. For good." The words hung between us, their meaning not immediately registering. "Dad, I have finals in 3 weeks. Then summer break. Not summer. Now. Permanently. Withdraw from school and come home." The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. "You want me to drop out? I am on scholarship. If I leave, I lose everything. And if you stay, your mother breaks. Choose Sterling." I spent the next hour proposing alternatives, reducing my course load and commuting twice weekly, researching in-home nursing care, applying for state assistance programs, moving my siblings to Westfield, where specialized services existed. Dad shot down each suggestion with increasing irritation. "We do not need government handouts. We need our son to step up and be a man." Mom stood in the doorway during this exchange, eyes darting between us, hands twisted in her apron. When I looked to her for support, she stared at the floor. "Diana, tell him," Dad commanded. "Tell him how you're falling apart." She flinched. "Gerald, please. Sterling is doing so well at school." "I am doing well because I am working my ass off," I said, frustration mounting. "I have done everything I could to help from school. I have sent money, research programs, visited whenever possible." "Not enough," Dad interrupted. "Not nearly enough." The argument escalated, 3 years of building tension erupting like a volcano. Dad pounded the table, rattling coffee cups. I remained seated, refusing to match his physical intimidation. "I cannot destroy my future and resent everyone forever. That does not help anyone," I explained, struggling to keep my voice level. "Let me finish my degree, and then I can contribute more effectively, make better money. So your fancy degree matters more than your blood, than your mother's health, than your brother and sister. That is not fair. Life is not fair." He roared. "You think I wanted disabled children at 50. You think I wanted my back to give out. But here we are." He crossed a line, talking about Jack and Emma like burdens rather than people. My siblings who laughed at bubbles and bathwater and clapped along to music they could feel more than hear, who recognized me after months away and reached for hugs with unconditional love. "This is the situation," Dad continued, lowering his voice to something more dangerous. "You quit school and come home to help your mother, or you are not part of this family anymore. Your choice." I looked at Mom silently begging her to intervene, but she stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot abandon my education," I said finally. "But I will not abandon this family either." "There are other solutions." Dad stood so quickly his chair crashed backward. "Get out, Gerald, please," Mom whispered. "He has made his choice, Diana. If college means more to him than his family, he is not my son." I stayed seated, stunned into stillness. "You cannot be serious." Dad stormed past me toward the stairs. Minutes later, he returned with my overnight bag, which he threw at my feet. "I want you gone before dinner. Dad, Mr. Patterson to you now. Strangers use last names." He marched upstairs again, and I heard my childhood bedroom door slam open. Through the kitchen window, I watched in disbelief as my belongings began raining down onto the front lawn. Books, clothes, the model airplane we had built together when I was 10. The neighbors across the street paused their gardening to stare. Humiliation burned through me, followed by a wave of disbelief. This could not be happening. Mom clutched my arm. "He does not mean it. He is just overwhelmed. Give him time to cool off." But the systematic emptying of my room continued. Dad worked with grim efficiency, 17 years of my existence, evicted in under 20 minutes. When I finally moved to leave, Mom pressed an envelope into my hand. "Emergency money," she whispered. "Call me tomorrow when he's at physical therapy." I wanted to hug her to promise everything would be okay, but Jack started wailing from the living room. She squeezed my hand once before rushing to him. Dad blocked the doorway as I headed out. "One last chance. Your education or your family?" I looked into the eyes of the man who had taught me to fish, to change oil, to solve equations. "I choose both," I said. "When you are ready to discuss real solutions, call me." His face hardened. "Do not come back." The front door slammed behind me with the finality of a judge's gavel. I gathered my belongings from the lawn under the watchful eyes of neighbors, some offering hesitant waves I could not return through my humiliation. That night I parked in the far corner of the campus lot and reclined my seat as far as it would go. Sleep came in restless bursts, each headlight triggering hope that somehow Dad had tracked me down to apologize. By morning my phone showed 0 missed calls, and reality settled in like a physical weight. I was homeless, and my father had discarded me for choosing my future. The first week of homelessness taught me how quickly life can unravel. I showered at the gym, stored food in my locker, and washed clothes in bathroom sinks. My roommate had moved his girlfriend in months earlier, making returning to our shared apartment uncomfortable at best. Several friends offered couches, but shame kept me silent about my situation. Just staying late at the lab became my standard explanation for arriving to morning classes in wrinkled clothes. The emergency money Mom had slipped me, $300, would cover about 2 weeks of food if I was careful. My father's banking app notification appeared on day 3. "You have been removed as an authorized user from account ending in 4721. The joint account set up for emergencies when I first left for college now inaccessible. Another severance." I tried calling Mom daily, but calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages showed as delivered but unanswered. Had Dad confiscated her phone, or had she chosen sides? The uncertainty was almost worse than knowing. My thermodynamics professor, Dr. Winters, stopped me after a particularly disastrous pop quiz. "Sterling, you have gone from my top student to failing in 3 weeks. What is happening?" I mumbled something about family issues, but he insisted on a proper meeting in his office. Something about his concerned expression broke my carefully constructed facade. Sitting in his cluttered office, surrounded by engineering textbooks and half-built prototypes, I told him everything. "You have been sleeping in your car for a week," he asked, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. "Why did not you come to student services?" I had no good answer beyond pride and shock. "Doctor?" Winters immediately walked me to the emergency student services office, where a counselor named Mariah helped arrange temporary housing in a graduate student's spare room. "This is more common than you think," Mariah said gently. "Family estrangement affects about 25% of adults in some form. You are not alone." The graduate student, Darius, was a quiet engineering PhD candidate who asked no questions about my situation. His only requirements were cleanliness and quiet after 11 p.m., both easy to accommodate. Having a real bed improved my physical state, but my mental health continued deteriorating. 10 days after my exile, Uncle Robert called. "Your father says you have abandoned the family," he began without greeting. "Says you're partying while your mother works herself to death. That does not sound like you." The mischaracterization stung worse than the original rejection. He demanded I drop out of college to become a full-time caregiver. When I suggested alternatives, he threw my belongings onto the lawn. Silence. Then Gerald always was. A stubborn son of a bitch. But family is family, Sterling. Find a compromise. I have tried. He will not discuss anything except me quitting school. After Uncle Robert, other relatives called, each seemingly operating on Dad's distorted version of events. My father was rewriting history, casting himself as the abandoned parent rather than the one who had done the abandoning. 2 weeks and my phone rang with Mom's ringtone at 3 a.m. I answered immediately, heart pounding. Sterling, her voice was barely audible. "Are you okay?" "I am okay." "Are you?" "Are the twins we are managing. Your father." She trailed off. "He is getting worse without you." More angry. "The physical therapist says his recovery is slow because of stress." The implied blame was subtle but unmistakable. "Mom, I can help find solutions that do not involve destroying my future." "He will not hear it. Says you made your choice." A muffled sound in the background. "I have to go. He cannot know I called." The call ended before I could respond. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, wondering if my education was worth this division. But surrendering to Dad's demands would not fix the underlying problems. It would only mask them temporarily while breeding permanent resentment. My financial situation grew dire by week 3. The campus job paid bi-weekly, and my next check would barely cover food. The financial aid office explained that breaking my scholarship mid-year would require repaying the semester's tuition, nearly $20,000. Withdrawing now meant financial ruin and no degree. FAFSA complications emerged as another obstacle. Legally, I remained a dependent student with financial aid determined by my parents' income despite being cut off. Changing dependency status required extensive documentation of estrangement, a humiliating process that might still be denied. Through all this, I attended classes in a fog, my GPA in freefall. Dr. Winters connected me with an alumni mentor named Thomas Brady, who had graduated from Westfield 20 years earlier and now ran an engineering consulting firm. During our first meeting at a coffee shop off campus, I struggled to maintain professional composure. "Your situation hits close to home," Thomas said, after hearing my story. "My father disowned me for choosing engineering over the family farm. We reconciled years later, but those scars remain. He offered me a flexible part-time position at his firm, paying nearly twice my campus job. "You will earn this through real work," he insisted. "This is not charity." Just as things seemed to stabilize, Dad escalated. He appeared outside my fluid dynamics class one Thursday afternoon, standing near the building exit with arms crossed. Fellow students glanced curiously between us as I froze on the steps. "Your mother cannot sleep," he announced loudly. "Jack had a seizure yesterday. Where were you?" Students slowed their pace, sensing drama. Humiliation and anger warred within me. "We should talk privately," I suggested, gesturing away from the crowd. "Nothing to discuss. Just came to show you what abandonment looks like. Now you know how it feels." Security eventually asked him to leave campus. That night around midnight, my phone rang with his number. "Still enjoying your precious education while your family falls apart." His words, slurred slightly. Was he drinking, Dad? "Rarely touched alcohol. It is midnight. Can we talk tomorrow when be a man, Sterling, do your duty? Those fancy professors will not be family when you are old and alone. Blood takes care of blood." 3 weeks of stress, fear, and suppressed rage finally erupted. Family does not throw family away over ultimatums. Family does not create impossible choices. Family supports dreams and growth. You ungrateful. No. You listen for once. I have tried everything to help while staying in school. You rejected every solution. You threw me out. You chose this division. So honestly, Dad, fuck yourself. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them, not because they were undeserved, but because they would only validate his narrative of my betrayal. I hung up and blocked his number hands, shaking violently. Sleep evaded me that night, but alongside the guilt came something unexpected relief. The constant weight of trying to please an unpleasable father lifted slightly. For the first time in weeks, I breathed fully. The next day, I failed my midterm exam so spectacularly that Dr. Winters pulled me aside afterward. Go home, Sterling. Not to your father, to your temporary housing. Take the weekend. Sleep. Eat properly. Monday, we discuss makeup options. His kindness broke something inside me. I nodded mutely and left, then sat in my car and sobbed until my throat hurt and my eyes swelled. Rock bottom had a basement, and I had found it. That evening, a voicemail from Mom appeared. Sterling, your father told me what you said. I blame myself for all this, for not standing up sooner, for letting him push you away. We are drowning here without you, but I never wanted this cost. I never wanted you to lose your future. Her voice broke. I do not know what to do anymore. Your father cannot work. I cannot manage alone, and you deserve your life too. I am sorry, baby. So sorry. Her pain hurt worse than my own. While I had been fighting for my survival, she had been drowning in an impossible situation with no ally. We were both victims of Dad's rigid worldview, but Mom remained trapped while I had escaped, and that realization changed everything. The turning point came not through confrontation but connection. That weekend, instead of studying for makeup exams, I researched every available resource for families with disabled children. The local United Way connected me with a case manager who specialized in developmental disabilities. The university's law clinic advised on guardianship and long-term planning. By Monday morning, I had compiled a comprehensive assistance plan, state respite care programs, medical transportation services, support groups, and specialized therapy options, all without requiring me to abandon my education. Thomas noticed my renewed focus at work. You look different today, less haunted. I am done being a victim. My father created this situation, but I am choosing how to respond. With Thomas's guidance, I arranged a meeting with a social worker named Elaine who had 20 years of experience with families like mine. She agreed to contact my mother directly as part of a county outreach program, circumventing my father's gatekeeping. 2 days later, Mom called from an unfamiliar number. The social worker came today, she whispered. Your father was furious at first, but she was wonderful, Sterling. She talked about Jack and Emma's rights to services, not charity. Used words like entitlements and legal obligations of the school district. Your father actually listened. This tiny victory gave me hope. Mom arranged to meet me at a diner halfway between campus and home the following weekend. She arrived looking exhausted, but determined a subtle change in her posture, suggesting something had shifted. I have enabled him for 23 years, she admitted over coffee. Made excuses, smoothed things over, kept the peace at all costs. And look where it got us. We developed a plan. Mom would work with Elaine to implement support services incrementally. I would continue my education, but visit monthly to give Mom respite weekends. Most importantly, Mom would begin therapy to develop boundaries with Dad. He is not a monster, Sterling, she said, twisting her napkin. He is terrified. His own father abandoned their family when his sister got polio. He has carried that fear his whole life. That caring for a disabled family means sacrifice and abandonment. Understanding my father's trauma did not excuse his actions, but explained them. The cycle of generational pain continued through him to me, unless I chose to break it. Progress came in painful increments. Dad refused to speak to me directly, but allowed Mom to accept my help coordinating services. The twins began receiving physical therapy at a specialized center rather than struggling through home exercises. A respite care worker came twice weekly, giving Mom crucial breaks. My midterm makeup exams pulled my grades back from the brink of disaster. Darius offered to extend my stay in his spare room at reduced rent. Thomas increased my hours at the consulting firm as my skills improved. The unexpected breakthrough occurred when Emma developed pneumonia 3 months after our separation. Dad called at 2 a.m., his voice stripped of pride. "Your sister is in the hospital. Room 312. He hung up immediately. I drove through the night, arriving as dawn broke over the hospital. Mom sat beside Emma's bed, oxygen tubes and monitors surrounding my little sister's fragile form. Dad stood at the window, back turned. No words passed between us, but he did not leave when I entered. We existed in the same space, united in worry for Emma. When the doctor arrived to discuss treatment, Dad stepped back, allowing me to join the conversation about medication options. Emma recovered slowly. During her week-long hospital stay, I brought food for my parents, researched her condition, and spelled them for breaks. Dad and I communicated through Mom initially, then in terse, direct exchanges, and finally in cautious conversations focused exclusively on Emma's care. On her discharge day, as we gathered her belongings, Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "The respite care worker says, you found that program." I nodded, waiting. Insurance would not cover it. The social worker got it approved through some state waiver. Another pause. "It helps your mother." Coming from Dad, this was tantamount to gratitude. I recognized the overture for what it was. Not an apology, but an acknowledgement. "There are more programs available," I offered carefully. "Services specifically for families like ours." He flinched at ours. Recognition that despite everything, we remained connected. "Your mother has the information." It was a small opening, but enough to build upon. The reconciliation progressed in stages. Dad allowed me to visit monthly, though our interactions remained strained. Mom blossomed with proper support, joining a parent group and advocating for the twins' educational needs. Jack and Emma thrived with consistent professional intervention, achieving milestones previously thought impossible. By my senior year, we had established a sustainable family system. Dad attended therapy reluctantly but consistently, working through his fear-based controlling behaviors. I maintained my academic standing while contributing meaningfully to my family's well-being, not through self-sacrifice, but through informed advocacy and boundaries. My graduation ceremony marked a symbolic turning point. All 4 family members attended, with specialized transportation for the twins and accessible seating arranged. Dad watched stiffly as I crossed the stage, but I caught the shine in his eyes when I glanced back. At dinner afterward, in a quiet moment, while Mom helped Emma with her meal, Dad placed a small box beside my plate. "It was my father's," he said gruffly, before he left. Inside lay a pocket watch, tarnished with age but still ticking. The inheritance he had withheld from me now passed forward. "Sterling," he began, then stopped, struggling. I was wrong. 3 words. Not a complete apology, but more than I ever expected. I nodded, accepting both the gift and the sentiment behind it. "I found a job with a firm 30 miles from home," I told him. "Close enough to help regularly, far enough to have my own life." He nodded once, a gesture of respect I had sought my entire life. The journey taught me that true family responsibility means setting healthy boundaries, not endless self-sacrifice. That supporting loved ones sometimes requires standing firm against toxic expectations. That breaking generational cycles demands courage to choose different paths. Today, 3 years after that driveway confrontation, our family functions better than ever. Professional caregivers provide skilled support. Mom has rediscovered her painting, and Dad has slowly learned that accepting help demonstrates strength, not weakness. The twins continue making progress that amazes their doctors. As for me, I discovered that saying no to unreasonable demands was not abandonment but self-preservation, and ultimately saved our entire family from collapse. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do for those we love is refuse to perpetuate harmful patterns, even when it temporarily causes pain. If you have ever faced impossible family expectations, or been forced to choose between your future and others' demands, leave a comment below, sharing how you navigated those waters. Like this video if you believe healthy boundaries strengthen rather than weaken families, and subscribe for more stories about finding your way through family challenges. Remember, True love sometimes means standing firm rather than giving in, and that choice might save everyone involved. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it brings clarity to those facing similar crossroads.